Fluorescent lights hummed ominously in the sterile glass building. As the last remnants of daylight faded, 3 colleagues found themselves alone in the vast, shadowy expanse. It was a Friday night, and deadlines loomed large, casting a dark cloud over what was supposed to be the start of their weekend. Claire, a diligent but introverted data analyst, stared at her computer screen, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she crunched numbers with unwavering determination. She rarely socialized with her coworkers, preferring the solitude of spreadsheets and databases. This evening was no different as she hunched over her desk, oblivious to the world around her. John, the office prankster and eternal optimist, sat nearby, scrolling through memes and entertaining himself with internet distractions. His workstation was adorned with quirky bobbleheads, a constant source of amusement during his mundane workdays. But tonight, the jokes had lost their charm, and the silence that enveloped him felt eerily oppressive. Olivia, a rising star in the marketing department, was known for her unwavering ambition. She meticulously fine-tuned her presentation for an important client meeting scheduled for the next morning. Her phone buzzed with calls and messages from friends inviting her out for a night of fun, but she waved them off, determined to impress the client with her dedication. The office clock ticked away, echoing louder than usual in the otherwise silent workspace. Outside, rain splattered against the windows, casting eerie, distorted shadows that danced upon the cubicle walls. The weather added to the isolation, making it seem as if the trio was the last living souls in the entire building. As the hours passed, Claire's mind began to play tricks on her. She thought she heard faint whispers, but when she looked around, her colleagues were engrossed in their work. She chalked it up to her imagination, fatigue, and the odd acoustics of the empty office. John glanced at the conference room adjacent to his workstation, where the glass walls were now fogged, and a cold sweat formed on his brow. In the dimly lit room, he thought he glimpsed a shadowy figure, but when he blinked, it was gone. He dismissed it as a trick of the light and tried to focus on his cat videos. Olivia, too, felt a growing unease as she continued working. The marketing department was known for its late-night work sessions, but tonight was different. Her reflection in the window seemed distorted, her eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. She quickly turned away, unable to shake off the feeling that something was watching her. Despite their individual experiences, the colleagues didn't speak of their discomfort. Each was convinced that they were simply letting their imaginations run wild. But as the night deepened, the office building seemed to come alive with inexplicable sounds. Muffled footsteps, whispers, and a faint, chilling breeze began to stir. An unspoken tension mounted, and the colleagues found it increasingly difficult to concentrate. They shared nervous glances, but continued toiling away, trying to dismiss the inexplicable unease that had settled over them. Little did they know that their long night was about to take a sinister turn, and their shared nightmare was only beginning. The eerie silence in the office was shattered by the sound of an echoing scream that pierced through the building. Olivia, her eyes wide with terror, was the first to react. She rose from her desk, knocking her chair aside, and rushed towards the source of the scream. Claire and John, equally shaken, followed Olivia into the dimly lit hallway. The flickering emergency lights cast grotesque, flickering shadows on the walls, as they hurried toward the origin of the cry. Their footsteps echoed ominously, and each corner seemed to hide a potential threat. They found a horrifying scene. Olivia's presentation materials lay scattered on the floor, and her phone had been tossed to the side. But Olivia herself was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in as the remaining two colleagues frantically searched the surrounding area. "Where is she? Olivia!" Claire called out, her voice trembling. The hallway stretched before them, seemingly endless in its darkness. And then, a shadowy figure emerged at the far end, slowly, deliberately moving toward them. Panic turned to dread as they realized this figure was no office security guard. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a man clad in tattered clothes, his face obscured by a grotesque mask that seemed to be made from the stitched-together remains of other masks. In his hand, he held a bloodied knife, and his eyes glinted with a malevolent madness. Claire and John froze in horror as the masked man approached, step by ominous step. The emergency lights continued to flicker, casting an eerie, strobe-like effect that made the scene even more nightmarish. There was no escape from this relentless pursuer. Olivia's desperate screams echoed through the hallway as she struggled in the clutches of the maniac. Her pleas for help were agonizing to hear, but they were quickly silenced by a chilling gurgle as the knife descended with a merciless finality. The killer dropped Olivia's lifeless body to the floor, and the gruesome tableau was illuminated by the harsh, intermittent light. John and Claire watched in shock as the maniac turned his attention to them, his mask hiding any hint of remorse or humanity. With a primal scream, they fled in opposite directions. John dashed down a corridor, his heart pounding in his chest, but the masked killer pursued him relentlessly. Desperation and fear fueled his flight, but the masked man was faster, and it was only a matter of time. Claire, meanwhile, cowered behind a cubicle, trying to stifle her sobs. She could hear John's pleas for mercy, the sound of the knife, and then the chilling silence that followed. Tears streamed down her face, and she knew she had to find a way out. Her trembling fingers dialed 911 on her phone, but the call wouldn't connect. She could hear the masked man's footsteps approaching. With newfound determination, she decided to make a run for the stairwell. There was a chance she could escape if she could reach the ground floor. As she bolted toward the stairwell door, she heard the maniac's mad laughter echoing through the corridor. She didn't look back, fearing what she might see. Her heart pounded in her chest as she reached the stairwell and threw herself inside, slamming the door shut behind her. Claire's escape was short-lived. The killer, fueled by unholy determination, shattered the glass pane of the door and stepped inside. The light in the stairwell flickered wildly as he approached her, the knife gleaming with fresh blood. Her final blood-curdling scream was lost in the cold, relentless darkness. The office building, once a place of mundane routines and empty cubicles, had now become a sinister and blood-soaked chamber of horror. The killer, his insatiable appetite for violence still unsatisfied, would continue his rampage, leaving behind a chilling legacy of terror and death.